Kia ora koutou, no mai haere mai. Welcome along to our community board meeting for the Wānaka-Upper Clutha. Today's the 21st of November and looking forward to a good meeting. Thank you for those that are joining us that are from the public that are going to, a number of you are going to speak at the public submission, so thank you for that. Tony Avery, Head of Property and Infrastructure, thanks for joining us as the executive. John is sitting in for Jane. Jane's at local government election training in Whanganui-a-Tara today. So John is taking our minutes. Thank you for that. Quinton, Councillor Smith attending to be part of discussions, but not to vote, but thanks for your input, Quinton. We are recording the meeting as well, so just be aware of that. No apologies today, so thank you for everyone for attendance. I'll ask if there's any leave of absence requests between now and the next meeting. No one going on holiday? I know you guys work so hard. Just take a couple of days off, 24/7. That makes things easy. I don't need to move that then, so there's no apologies and no leaves of absence. Everyone's been aware of the agenda, so I'll ask if there's any conflict of interest that have arisen based on the agenda items today. No there. Fantastic.
I was just wondering whether the road markings in Anderson Road might make you think that I had a conflict of interest, but it doesn't really affect me in terms of the marking and stuff.
We're aware of where you reside and where the markings are. Maybe if it was right outside your house, maybe.
No, there's already
Very good. So no resolution required for conflicts of interest and no matters lying on the table. We didn't roll anything over from the last month. So let's get into what I enjoy most about the our meetings is the public forum. I'm not sure if Oliver's here. No. So we did have Oliver Harkis from out and about Wānaka. We'll see if he turns up in the next few minutes. Otherwise, Brian and your support crew, Murray, would you love to hear what you have to say regarding the licence to occupy on Warren Street? So we'll give you plenty of time, Brian, to come up. Oh, yes. I think so.
You'll have to excuse me, I've got Parkinson's and long COVID, so I'm a bit fuzzy today. It's always when you want to have a good day, you have a bad day, and vice versa. So please excuse me.
Absolutely fine, Brian. You take your time, and we'll give you as much time as you need.
I'm Brian Crefts of 59 Stratford Terrace, and I'm here today to speak to an item number 3 on the agenda, the licence to occupy parts and at the top end of Warren Street, as submitted by Turk Holdings Limited, one of my neighbours. In 2021, Turk Holdings Limited submitted a resource consent application to subdivide their property, and this licence to occupy forms part of this application. I would state that I am not opposed to the development, however, there are some material concerns. I was not aware that this application for the licence to occupy was being made until Monday this week. As a consequence, there has been no opportunity to meet with either the developer or the council in an effort to mitigate my concerns. Because this development in totem has numerous impacts on my property, I'm of the view that I need that time to have this discussion. To this end, I have written to the council requesting that item number 3 on the agenda be deferred, and have been advised that this request has been denied. I've got to say that I find it somewhat incredulous that, being the only immediately adjacent neighbour to the unformed walkway, I have not been given the opportunity to discuss in a timely manner the issues and concerns that I have. And I've also had to resort to seeking legal advice to see where our standing is. Given the lack of communication, I considered that I should attend this community board meeting to re-emphasise my position, being that I am not opposed to the development in totem and the granting of a licence to occupy, the granting of a licence to occupy by Turk Holdings Limited be deferred in the short term to enable me to have time to have the discussions with the company and the council to mitigate my concerns. Thank you.
Brian, could I just ask, if you're able, the key you've talked about the process. Do you have 1 or 2 key concerns about the licence to occupy itself?
No. Well, the 2 really major matters are access way to it's assumed that the access way property runs right down the side, and it's just been assumed that the gateway that's there at the moment is the gateway that it's going to be, but we may have thoughts on where we want to have land put aside for other gateways into the property, because it's just on an acre there. That's the first one. The second one is the stormwater runoff, and that's referred to in the reports that have been given to you, I understand, from the new access way, forming part of the license to occupy. Then we've got sort of those residual things like traffic movements, lighting, and tree removals. So
okay, that's really helpful. I appreciate that, and I know that Dave, our senior staff member, will be talking to this paper as well. So thank you for raising that to our attention, and we will be considering that when we discuss this as part of the agenda item later today.
great. Okay, thank you very much.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming, and thanks, Murray, for coming as support.
That's
right. Ramesh, you got your yellow hat on today, Ramesh?
Yes.
Welcome along. I think you might be wanting to talk about some bus infrastructure in town.
Yes.
The floor is yours, Ramesh.
At the moment, obviously, bus parking is up for a review, or how that's all happening. We predominantly do the most bus or passenger transport in Wānaka. A couple of things that we find and see that hopefully help some of your decisions or thought processes, and possibly including when people do make these decisions, maybe they can come and talk to us as well from council. On regular occasions, we will be doing weddings or other charters from the lakefront, and we could be shifting on a quiet day, maybe 150 people, could be up to 600 or 700 people. Now, the problem that we have at the moment is there's no time limit, my understanding, on bus parking. We would suggest that maybe having a 30-minute time limit, and I'm aware that you guys are looking at another place down at maybe Wall Street, somewhere.
That's on the agenda today, yes.
Now, our thought process around that is lots of tour companies come in, and for a driver's lunch break, they've got to have a required 30-minute lunch break before they're allowed to start driving. If people are doing that, what it would mean is, instead of us turning up there, the other day, there would have been 9 buses maybe in the bus park.
We're talking Dungarvan Street, Ramesh?
No, we're talking about the lakefront.
Okay, so down by the old block.
Yeah, so we regularly will have on ones to be picking up at a similar time, 6 or 7 buses. Now, if people were there for half an hour breaks, that would be fine. But when people are there for the long period, where people play maybe 2 or 3 hours, it just becomes a huge problem in the sense of then we're trying to pick up guests and customers of town, and you're then parking in the middle of the causeway.
Yes.
A couple of thought processes around that we've thought is 1 half an hour time limits, which 5 minutes either side isn't going to really break anyone. And having some maybe angled parking, so buses can pull up and then be able to leave again. By doing that, if the groups are in town longer, the driver can drop them off, they can go and park, and then they can walk back up. It's not too much of an issue. But I am aware that the 200 or 300 people that might roll into town to go to the cafes and everything, town obviously all needs that, but it's just making it more manageable, because the thing that we get a little bit concerned about is when all the bus parks are full, and then we're trying to pick up, and technically not a designated bus park, but that's where all the guests have been advised to meet. And it is kind of needed there because of all the different accommodations. We do some pickups at Dungarvan Street, but you can only get 3 buses on there, and half the time that has got increased amount of buses.
I think you've chosen a good time to speak today, because there will be part of the agenda talking about McDougall Street and bus parking there. So I think we can probably broaden out that conversation. We've got just 36 minutes. Has anyone got any questions, John?
Do you have any desire to have time limits on the Dungarvan Street bus stop as well? Or would you like to see more enforcement there of parking restrictions?
My thought process is maybe having a 30-minute. if there's a long-term park advised, that is good. And I'm aware this is probably not achievable. If there was on the edge of Pembroke Park where buses could go, like there was 3 or 4 longer term parks that could go into the back of there between the car and the park, that would actually be quite a good outcome, because some of the people that do get off the buses can't actually walk. They're not going to walk from here to McPherson Street. So.
Mitch, thanks for raising that. Thanks for sharing your insight and knowledge. I think it's really been taken on board that being a key part of that bus infrastructure and bus movements here, that you should be involved as a key stakeholder in some of these conversations. So thank you. Cool. Cheers, Ramesh. Closing, Karen. Closing, Karen. Yeah, closing. Great. Thank you. Very good. Let's move on. There's been no other individuals wanting to speak at the public forum, so thank you to Ramesh and Brian. I'm going to confirm the agenda. Unless anyone has anything that they'd like to suggest to change on the document as it currently stands. So if I move that the board resolve to adopt the agenda without additional alteration, do I have a seconder for that? Yeah. John, all those in favour? Aye. No one against. Thank you very much. Our last meeting was on the 10th of October in Cadrona. Has anyone got any comments or changes for those minutes that were taken on the 10th of October? Very good. If someone was at that meeting, would someone like to move that we adopt those minutes? Cody, anyone want to second? Thank you, Linda. All those in favour of adopting the minutes as in the document from the 10th of October? Aye. Anyone against? We'll carry that as well. Wonderful. Okay, Simon, you're going to speak to, I understand is Hugo online? Or yeah, cool. So Hugo's not online today, but Simon Mason is coming to talk about some additional parking restrictions that we have proposed from staff under a bylaw in 2018. We've got the document and some of the background in front of us. Simon, would you like to add anything to this before we kick off?
No, obviously, whilst I'm the warm body in front of you today, I'm not the author of this paper, and joined by Hugo online to respond to the technical queries.
Morning, Hugo.
Yeah, I'm down and well, and has made a wise decision to keep his germs at home. But yeah, happy to take the paper as read and receive questions.
All right, thank you. Hugo, anything you want to add in advance?
No, yep. I'm happy to take on questions.
Let's go around. Barry, any questions or observations around the suggested changes?
No, I guess the comment that I get regularly is that we're probably maybe a little bit over-regulated with no parking areas. And I certainly get comments from sectors of the community. There's older people that find that more and more parking restrictions does affect their ability to get around, and as with the younger people as well, mums and kids and what have you. So I guess, yeah, I'm aware that we need to manage the issue, but I'm also mindful of the fact that we don't want to isolate sectors of our community by restricting parking.
Fair comment. Yeah. Thank you very, John.
Yeah, looking at the Anderson Road section, I went out and had a look this morning. Where that is proposed, it's only a very small section, and with the divider in the middle of the road, it's physically not possible to park there without blocking the road in any event. And I noticed already that there is existing clearway signs on the eastern side of that road. So in theory, people shouldn't be parking there, although potentially there is space for vehicles to park along there. I'm surprised we haven't actually continued that no parking on the western side all the way along, because once vehicles park there, this is a major key arterial, which is only going to get busier. I think it's obvious that this is going to become more and more of an issue if there's any parking on that side of the road. But there is scope potentially to do some formalised parking on the eastern side. But then, do we want parking on what's going to be a major arterial through that, connecting that part of town? So I'm very comfortable with what's here. It's just a practical thing that needs to happen to keep the vehicles flowing on the key arterial.
John, hello.
Just, Chair, a couple of questions. The proposed bus park on McDougall Street,
it says bus operators use this area to pick up and drop off passengers. And it comes up in, I don't know whether we'll have it now or the later discussion about the management of bus parks, because we've got, the issue of time limit. It would be, I don't see having a bus stop there at all times. The amount of times I've seen it used for bus pickups and drop-offs is not that great, I don't believe, but we should have asked Ramesh, I guess, when he was at public forum. But I'm just questioning, if we're going to do bus stops, and we're going to be talking about them later on about time limits on them, have you got any comment on time limits on bus stops? Because I'll give you an example here. We talked about earlier, you heard from public forum, can we put time limits on bus stops in town? Can we put a time limit on this? And there was one at Albert Town also, can we put a time limit on the bus stops just used for school bus pickups and drop-offs?
You go to a first response to that.
Yeah, so bus stops are only for loading and unloading passengers. Bus parking is the ones you can stay longer. And this particular bus stop was requested by the school bus operators, as well as, but it is also, the area is also used by Treble Cone for the AM pickups and the Cadrona PM drop-offs as well in that area.
So, clarification in the way this one would be only for pick up and drop off. You couldn't park there for long periods of time like you did in public forum. So
it's a bus stop, not a bus park.
Right. Well, that's good to get that clarified then. So okay.
Let's throw that open because there's nowhere else in the agenda we're going to be talking about bus parking, or have I forgotten one?
Oh, maybe it's not. Sorry.
No. So I think we need to cover off the bus parking. So
yeah, well, it's good to get it clarified because it's going to come up again. I know there's going to be a request from help, like I say, help them. But if that's a bus stop and it can be enforced that you can't park there for other than drop off and pick up, then we don't need to put time limit on. And I don't know what the Dungarvan one is and the Lakeside one is.
Yeah. Okay. Linda, do you?
Chair, what's the Stony Creek with Maddie? Will it not come up there because that's another issue for bus parking?
Yeah, I think it'll come up within the confines of bus parking within that reserve, but I think that's slightly separate at the moment. Yeah, that's a good question, but
we're not going wide enough out all the time. We're doing this micromanagement.
Well, we're sort of looking at that sort of Pembroke, Dungarvan sort of quadrant as effectively bus parking and bus stopping to service town. I think what we're talking about.
We're talking about bus stops on actually on road reserve. This is the difference between reserves and road reserves. So
yes,
the formal bus stops and bus parks on the side of roads and road reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight a couple of things. I mean, just running to Ramesh's point, is this is actually a good site for that park and ride type operation, because there is parking available on the reserve nearby, so people could park there. Operators that are operating tourist experiences could actually get their customers to park there and transport them from this location. So in some ways, without impacting town centre car parking. So in some ways, this is a really good location for a bus stop. And I use that word correctly. I just wanted to highlight that there is actually some, I think we just need to look slightly broader at consequential impacts of this, because that bus stop's terribly located in that it's hard against the curb. There isn't anywhere for people to walk. There's a really distinct design line there where people have worn out the verge because of the amount of footpath. So what we need is to move the bus stop back 3 meters to form the footpath and create a safe and functional bus stop there. And I support the bus stop. There's all day parking directly opposite in the bays against Pembroke Park. There's potential for all day parking, will be informal within the reserve. And as you say, Treble Cone, Cadrona use it for staff parking for that reason as a pickup spot. So I just wanted to highlight those consequential things. I know we're about to put a fence around, a new post and rail fence around the reserve. And so it would make sense that we account for that and in potentially moving the bus stop back and putting the fence around the back of that. Just a little bit of cross discussion with reserves, and looking at
you know, and I know there's not a lot of money, but just going, is there room to seal 200 metres of?
Okay, just put pause there, and I'll come back to you, Lyle. Hugo, have you got some sense around the sort of the infrastructure that's going around? If this is going to be a continued bus drop off and pick up, no footpath, no access, have you thought of where it's actually located in that broader context of people moving?
Yeah.
around?
Yeah, its proximity to the rugby grounds, the MP show, and just the sort of a central area of that parking around it. But it's Quinta's point's very valid, and it requires some funding to sort of get it to that level of service, which is, yeah, I think is important.
Okay, Lyle, what was your?
Well, I can add to that. I agree. I don't disagree with having a bus stop there. I think it's a good location for it. Yes, there's good points because there is going to be changes along there with the fence. There's other things that the rugby club and the AMP are suggesting with the entranceway moving. So I think we, in the interim though, we go with the bus stop, as long as it's not a all-day bus stop. And of course, I support that. So that was the question, was just to clarify. And I agree with what Grant was saying. There's going to be some changes there, but until I think we make the alterations, once we know exactly what those changes are going to be, apart from just the fence.
Definitely.
All right, another question.
Absolutely, you go for it. Absolutely, no, you're right.
Just on the North Lake ones, just trying to understand how the limits will be signposted, because a lot of those are indented parks. Do you have to have the 60-minute signs at each indent, or how do you manage it? Otherwise, because we're going to have one heck of a lot of signs along those streets to manage that car parking.
Good question. Simon, you go.
Yeah, I'd have to. They're narrow enough that you could get one sign in the middle to cover all. The bays are 2 or 3 car spaces, and you could get a sign in the middle of the bays to cover those 2 or 3 spaces.
So you were saying that every bay would have to have a sign.
Single sign, yes, correct.
There's 12 bays there, or even more maybe. But
So unfortunately, you know, with a significant number of signs to make these parking restrictions enforceable.
Yes, yes.
You can't have a zone. You're entering a 30-minute parking
We
zone.
end up with some pretty sticky situations with people challenging those. They can't actually see the sign from their car.
Okay, well, that's something we have to take into account, that they're compromised there for keeping the continued revolvement of cars going through and not all-day parking there. Is that to be enforceable, there will need to be signs proliferated through there.
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
No problem, no. Linda, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The concern I have with North Lake is there's already we're designing smaller homes with, you know, no cars, no garages. We end up having nowhere for visitors to park when they come to visit these people that may have no car or may have a bike or whatever, but visitors coming to these places have nowhere to park. And if you're there for an afternoon, I think restricting it in a residential is quite unnecessary. I think unless you're going to provide somewhere to park, what happens, and you see this already in the Frankton kind of developments where there is no garaging and people are expected to have no car, they park all over the berms and they just have no regard for any of the amenity plantings and landscape that goes into these projects. So whilst I can see where you're coming from to try and restrict it, it's just going to, I believe, create another issue for whether your visitors and friends that want to visit these places come and park for an afternoon tea. You're going to restrict them from being there for an hour. And who's going to monitor it? We've got so many more internal commercial spaces that aren't monitored at the moment that need management. Why are we loading ourselves with yet more into residential zones that need to be monitored?
I'm going to ask Hugo. Hugo, what's any response to Linda's observations?
Yeah, so the P60 restriction that we're looking at is 8 AM to 6 PM. So the afternoon tea example, yeah, would be impacted. Outside those hours, it'd be unrestricted. And this area that we've proposed is predominantly a commercial sort of mixed use business area. So there's limited residential, well, there are some residential homes, but it's predominantly mixed use business, small businesses area.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but one block, even half a block back, you've got residential zones that have no parking and narrow little laneways that have no parking. So, you know, even though it might be zone commercial, it isn't a residential zone as such. You know, living spaces, I just think, you know, it's going to pose another issue for where people do park outside of those hours, and a monitoring concern.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything else? Anything else? Oh, yeah, other than the North Lake, sorry.
Oh, sure. Bus wise, I feel, you know, we need to really consider long term for buses. I see in Stony Creek when I walk to and from work, there'll be 3 or 4 buses. They park there for not just a drop off, they park there for hours, blocking up access ways and parking for other people visiting. I think it needs a really long term vision for parking drop offs. As you heard from Renisha this morning, there's already situations on the lakefront where we have up to 6 or 8 buses regularly, which is getting to be dangerous, where we're coming into a spine of parking as well for people to go shopping, pick up kids, drop off kids, as well as buses. It's just becoming really congested and doesn't seem to be monitored at all. We don't seem to have any idea on facts on how many buses seem to be coming to town, how many people are they dropping off, and where are they going when they drop them off. We don't have that information to be able to make these judgments. So I think we need to just be really well considered for the future of what is going to happen in Wānaka. Are we going to provide a little shuttle that'll be a drop off and drop into town type of top or something? You know, we need to, I feel, just consider those other options of getting people to and from 3 parks and in town in a longer vision.
Really good point. Simon, Hugo, is there any piece of work that's imminent around that whole challenge of bus parking?
Not within my sphere, perhaps. Anything you want to comment on that space?
Okay.
When we did the parking review, was buses not considered as part of the parking review?
Management plan.
What was that?
Parking management plan.
Parking management plan, was buses not considered as part of that?
It's still a work in progress. Still looking for it.
So is that the place that
overall parking strategy we have an approach, but it ain't what can do it.
I think we need to take this away and put it, we're going to be doing what's our priorities for next year as a community board, and we'll be doing that at the workshop, our planning and strategy meeting in a couple of weeks. I think that's a good one to raise, and we might have to push that. Are you good?
Yep.
Thank you. Chris.
Everyone's mentioning the concerns I had about everything other than Anderson Road, which is where I live. At the moment, the parking restrictions on Anderson Road start at Mount Island Drive, go towards Orby Road, and then there's the bottom half of Orby Road where the intersection that we need to control the parking on the side. Although I don't disagree with that. My issue is that if those extra restrictions you're putting in now go up as Anderson Road as far as the existing restrictions, then there is no parking on Anderson Road from Mount Island Drive all the way to Orby Road. From memory, is 650 metres on both sides. And if you then take that round the corner into Orby Road, it's 1.4 kilometres of yellow lines from Mount Island Drive down to Kelly's Flat, and no one can park on the side of the road. A little bit like John said, is on the eastern side there is the cycleway at the top of the side of the road reserve, if you like, comes down into an informal kind of roadside, should we say. I believe that there is room somewhere to put at least some parking in, because there's now 12 apartments, I think, on the corner of Anderson and Orby on the eastern side, the distinction ones, which are mostly holiday ones, so they often have more than 2 cars even staying there. And then you start talking about those of us that actually live there. Not so bad in my case, so I've got lots of street parking. But there is already issues I've heard from people just saying, oh, my guests haven't got anywhere to park, Metariki's been done, and I think it's actually done well. So there's no parking there. And then the residents on Anderson Road, opposite Mount Island Drive, there's houses with multiple tenancies and that sort of thing, so there's a lot of competition. And while I'm on my soapbox, part of the reason there is an issue is that people come from Walker Road, turn left into Anderson, and by the time they get to my place, which is just at the top of that rise, they're back at 60 k's an hour easily. And that's, you know, Anderson Road at those peak times is the only time that it will actually slow down. People are still going, you know, like the bad old days of 50 k's an hour, we're still exceeding that. So I guess what my point is really is that can we look in the future when we've maybe got some more money to put some roadside parking between on the eastern side at that bottom end, obviously not too close to the border, and anywhere else where we might be able to squeeze some in, shall we say. At the moment, where those yellow delineators are for the cycleway, there's nothing on there to say that you can't park on the other side, which is the cycleway and road reserve. And occasionally there will be people visiting that will park effectively on the cycleway part of Ellison Road, and there's nothing really to say that they shouldn't or can't, other than the yellow.
What's well made. Hugo, is there any intention to extend the current no parking lines from the corner of Albury and Anderson further up Anderson towards Mount Lion Drive? You know, there is a distinct gap between the two sets. Is there any? Can you see any requirement in the future for additional no parking to be put in place?
No, the road looks wide enough for parking on both sides and traffic lanes between them. Not at this stage, I'd say. Yeah, road's wide enough.
Just like to suggest maybe no parking on the western side, and then some relief on the eastern side where there's a bit more room between the edge of the road and the edge of the cycleway. But I don't think we can do that right now. Next year.
What my mate Cody?
The only thing I could offer that hasn't already been stated is on McDougall Street, that little car park that we're getting rid of. Is there any way we could do like a scooter park or like park? It's ridiculous.
So that's the one on McDougall opposite the community
small
hub.
on McDougall Street where there's a problem with trucks overlapping the driveways. Is there any possibility instead of having a no stopping, doing a scooter or a bike park or something else?
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, no, very valid. That's a good question. We could, yeah, definitely consider that, and I think it could be a good opportunity there.
Repurposing it for different modes to so it doesn't cause the issue of overlapping driveways.
Yeah.
Hugo, do you want to take that on board? If we pass the paper today,
Yep.
does that still allow us to? I mean, are we actually passing a motion that will require the yellow lines to be there, or do we need to make an amendment for consideration to repurposing that?
We need to make an amendment so that we don't approve the broken yellow lines there and reconsider.
Is there appetite around the board table to amend the motion when we come to it to repurpose that McDougall Street small no parking to non-vehicle parking? Hang on, John, and then Quinn.
I think we if we're going to do that, we should provide the option to do that, but not rule out the yellow lines if it isn't practical, so that we don't have to bring it back.
6.1 meters would be long enough for a normal car, though, wouldn't it? So
No, I measure that. You measure back from each driveway, and even a smaller car wouldn't fit in. You'd have to have hockey sticks.
to demonstrate the length of the parking.
It's the problem with the hockey sticks is it looks like a car park.
Yeah,
That's and even if the car doesn't fit, it will motivate people to park it. And
The
way
way
we need to investigate it rather than commit to making it available for alternative modes.
I think that if you put hockey sticks and then you put actual line markings that show that, a metre wide, it does sort of cause enough visual variability to going, well, hang on, this doesn't look like it's a normal car park. And if there's a sign there that says vehicle, motorbikes or whatever only. Okay, I think we'll make the motion that that's considered or investigated, but still leave open for if that's done.
So something to what's been investigated?
Whether we repurpose that space there to be either yellow lines or repurposed for non-vehicle parking.
And non-vehicle parking is
So,
scooters.
and so the motion is to approve the changes and set out McDougall Street, no stopping at any time, or alternative
Non-vehicle parking.
parking arrangement or something. Would that give them?
Absolutely, I think that's how I would do that.
Okay, all right.
Anything else from Cody? Right on, thank you.
I just want to speak to the bit about North Lake because while I
you know, look, it is challenging. North Lake is challenging, but I just want to acknowledge that this is a mixed use area, and that those businesses are reliant on turnover. There's a corner store, there's a cafe, there's a playground, there's a golfing studio, engineer's studio, a real estate agent. You know, all these businesses are reliant on, you know, people have their cars or their boats as in the case in North Lake, parked in unrestricted areas adjacent to a commercial area. It just doesn't work. They need to be able to get turnover. Those businesses are reliant on that. It's well documented that how, you know, those things need to be managed in order to, you know, there's a childcare centre as well, so people need, you know, 20 minutes to pick up their kids from childcare, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in context, and you know, it's really common in all our other commercial areas that that's the type of restriction that enables that use, including our town centre. So agree with the point that we do need to take a strategic approach to all our transport issues, including bus parking. The parking management plan, you know, really needs to be keeping that in mind. We've dealt with Dungarvan Street has come out a number of times as being the preferred hub for buses in Wānaka, but we need to test that and sort of design that to make sure that it's fit for purpose.
All good. I'm going to move the motion that we note the contents of the report, that we approve the changes, let's bring that up, as detailed, with the exception of McDougall Street, no stopping at any time or alternative non-vehicle parking considered. So we've got an or in there for staff to go away and to consider that being repurposed. Otherwise, we will be approving the changes to Anderson Road, McDougall Street, bus parking, and North Lake Drive. So I'll put that motion.
Are we taking it on advice that they'll talk to the reserves team about the other bus stop and fencing and stuff without changing the motion, but just take it on advice?
Yeah, it's going to come up in our discussion with as we look at with parks and reserves on what changes will happen over time at the showgrounds.
Yeah,
so
but I don't think
nodding his head as well. But
yeah,
just have a discussion about that.
I think that's been noted. Yeah. But as we said, this is a pragmatic, low-cost intervention at the moment to create a bus stop that is more fit for purpose without committing us long term to having any changes based on other use, fencing, etc.
And just a technical point, Mr. Chairman, is just noting in the resolution too, I know you amended it slightly, but the table there is very brief compared with the attachment A. I was wondering, technically, do we need a reference to attachment A to get more detail or not? What we're actually moving?
Well, we note the contents of this report. Yeah. So we're noting the contents of the report, and the contents of the report includes in its entirety. So I think that's automatically included there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I've moved that motion with the small amendment around that. Would anyone like to second that? John? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I move that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Motion carried unanimously. Great discussion, good stuff that's come out of it. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Hugo, for your hard work. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 2, and this is the temporary road closure application for Wānaka-Upper and Adam. Thank you for joining us. Now, last time we were here, I know Kim has helped write this report. She went on maternity leave. Any thank you, Mark. Any news on Kim?
Baby is born happy and healthy, and
please pass on our regards. So, anything you'd like to add to the paper around this annual road closure for the Wānaka-Upper event? Cool. I won't go around the table. Has anyone got any questions or comments, considering this is a reasonably common recurring request? Okay. Would anyone like to move the motion that this be the contents of the report be noted and that we approve the road closure for the Wānaka-Upper event? Thank you. Barry's moved it. Anyone seconding it? Chris is seconding it. All those in favour? No one against. Very good. So thank you very much, team. That is carried. we will move then to, are you guys sticking around for this one? You are too. Yeah, thank you. So we'll move on to the license to occupy for Warren Street. Okay. Dave, just based on Brian's comments in the public forum, and I understand there was some legal correspondence. Anything to update us subsequent to this paper being presented?
I think it'd be good to have this information, although I won't update the paper as such. The legal letter provided has outlined that there are concerns from the neighbour in relation to the potential impacts of the work being undertaken in the road reserve, and a request for deferral of the paper so discussions could be had. The situation is that there's a resource consent in and a resource consent required for the works in that road reserve. This is an unformed legal road, so that will go through its process under the RMA to understand who is affected and the veracity of those effects, whether it needs notification, further consultation, or different conditions. The LTO is not an approval of those effects per se. It's a principle of being able to occupy the road reserve, provided the resource consent is granted and that process is followed. And that's the process that's available to the neighbours through the RMA as to whether it affects or not.
Great clarity, thank you. I won't go around the table. Who just indicating who wants to speak to this? I understand. I've got to call my eye, Dave. Don't worry. Everyone good? Quentin.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, I suppose, touch on his. Obviously, through a resource consent, he may or may not be considered an affected party, or may or may not be notified. So we can't guarantee that will give him any further involvement in the process. I suppose just touching on the expectation around the impacts on him and his property, Mr. Kraft's property, including potential access and things like that. Would people usually be consulted in that case, or?
No, they wouldn't be consulted in the case for developing a road within a road reserve in an urban area. It would be anticipated that there would be roads sealed, lit, access ways will be as per
in a public sense. So this is a private occupation. This is a different.
Yeah, but the road reserve is one of the few within the urban area of Wānaka that isn't a sealed road. So it would be anticipated that the urban roads within the area would be sealed. So it's not something that isn't anticipated per se. The resource consent, there's a particular rule in the plan relating to roads within unformed road reserves, which have to consider the potential impacts of those. If those are considered and the neighbours aren't considered affected for whatever reasons, then you're correct, they wouldn't be part of the process, and the RMA is really set out to be able to assess the potential impacts of neighbours. So that's why we would leave it to that process for that, and the LTO is just about an occupation decision in principle, essentially.
But the example that you used, though, if council went in and chose to seal an unformed road, it would be within the purpose that was designated for, obviously. Yes. That it would be open to all users, that that people could join that and access their property from that. A private drive is different to that, isn't it?
No, well, essentially, in this particular case, there's an unformed legal road that has full public right access at all times. The applicant is sealing it so that it's in a better shape if it's being used over time. It's been used for a long time. Standards now require accesses to be sealed, so that we don't have dirt dragged out, rotting, all those different things. So for me, it's really a standard approach to development within an urban area and not something that's unanticipated.
Can I just ask a question? Is it ever anticipated that Warren Street would actually continue all the way through, and that paper road would actually become a formalised thoroughfare?
I think with the layout, I don't know the official answer to that, but I think the layout of Warren Street and how it works tell me that it's not going to actually come through.
I've never gone further down that walkway to actually see if it's
pretty steep.
Okay. I think
it wouldn't with the gradients.
When I went and visited, I looked at the top end from Chalmers and I never went down, because my question would be, if we agreed to this license to occupy, would that ever be detrimental to formalising the road through? Now, if we're saying that the road formalised through would be very unlikely to ever happen.
I think the conditions of a license to occupy allow that to be overruled anyway. You can withdraw a license to occupy.
It's at the council's
call at any time if you wish, yes.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Just a quick
I do have one more thing, sorry, Councillor. Just in terms of going through this and the issues that were raised, there's one of the conditions that I'd like to amend slightly, just to make sure that the resource consent process is where the design is coming from. So condition M in the report at the moment, if I could just read that quickly for you, said should the provisional design plans provided during the license application vary in any form, the applicant is to seek further approval of any detailed plans under the engineering acceptance process and provide the approval to council for additional license to occupy approval. That's not required because again, this is the use of space. So the proposed wording is that the design plans proposed by the applicant within the appendices are viewed as conceptual only. And for the purpose of informing the LTO decision, the final design will be subject of engineering acceptance as per the conditions of RM 21-0057 should that consent be granted. It's just specifying that the LTO is not what determines the design, the resource consent is, and that's where the effects are considered.
Do we need to note that, John, or
I can provide that.
Yeah, okay, with that clarification around this, yeah, the LTO versus the consent process.
Yeah, there is one condition about providing as-bills. Again, I think it's superfluous. That would be required under the consent, so I recommend removing that as well.
What's
That's condition W.
W? Okay, some minor tweaks there. Before the motion's put, is there any other discussion that anyone would like to enter into? Sorry, Lau, you, yes.
So that covered off what the question I was about to ask about, just confirming what you just said then.
Yeah. Would anyone like to?
Can I just?
Yeah.
Is there some way of going back to Mr. Crichton saying this is the process from here and
yeah,
just to give him that. I mean, even if he doesn't end up being consulted, at least he knows that there's another step between now and when it's.
Yeah, I've emailed his legal counsel to let them know that the process for the effects assessment is happening through the resource consent.
He can make lots of noise.
Yeah, so you've responded, yeah, fantastic. Okay. We've got this license to occupy. We're going to note the contents of the report. We're going to grant a license to occupy to Warren Street Road Reserve to enable Turk Holdings to install an accessway. As discussed, there's a couple of minor changes to the conditions that Dave has talked about that we've captured there, M and W. Would anyone like to move that motion? I'll move that motion. Would anyone like to second that? Lyle's going to second it. It's going to be interesting. Doesn't sound like everyone was gagging to do this. So all those in favour of the motions?
Right.
Anyone against? So we've got Chris and Barry against and all those rest in favour. So the motion is carried. Thank you. For license to occupy for Rifleman Street. So this is what we have done recently around using road reserve to allow for air quality, ORC air quality monitoring equipment. Anything to add, Adam, to this paper? Okay. So I'll throw it open to the team again. We've had one of, where was the last one we did this at? The cemetery or opposite the cemetery, where the playgrounds there?
Well, this is a temporary one, isn't it? This is a trailer.
Yes. It's a trailer.
Great months.
Yeah, but it's the same for the same purpose of monitoring air quality. Questions or comments around this license to occupy for this air quality monitoring station, trailer based?
Yeah, I do share the concerns that the trailer being parked on the berm will encourage other people to park on the berm. I just wondered what, if anything, we can do to discourage that.
Just so I understand, will it look like a trailer or will it have the sort of hoardings around it to make it so it looks like more of a structure than a vehicle?
It's a single axle trailer, so it will still have the drawbar.
Okay, so it'll be pretty obvious that it's a trailer. Yeah, that's a valid point. Adam, have you got any thoughts around how this will create?
Yeah, I'm not sure on how frequently the car parks around the area are actually full. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if I may, I think the reason for this being on the reserve was to try and retain car parking. Yes. People have that ability, so it's always a difficult situation. And I think if we get situations where people do begin to park, we're going to have to educate people not to do that, and that's probably the only thing we can really say in terms of what we can do to discourage people parking at the park.
So you've noted it. I think it needs to be monitored. Will hopefully it won't lead to behaviour transgression. Lyle?
No, I'm just going to comment. use that car park quite often training, and there's always car parks available there. The childcare centre down, a few parks used for that, but for an 8-month period, I don't think we'll have too much of a problem with that car park being overburdened.
Very good. Okay, any other discussion? Right, I'll move on to noting the contents of the report. The motion will be to note the contents of the report and to grant the LTO to Rifleman Street for OIC to install temporary mobile quality monitoring station equipment. Anyone like to move that? Cody and John is seconding. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, team. Right, another licence to occupy, and this is for King's Drive 122 for the Montessori children and the parents of wanting a firmer platform for bike parking outside of the Montessori early child care centre. Anything to add, Adam or Dave? Cool. Maybe unsurprising, very supportive of this. I love the fact that the parents have initiated this and can sort of understand how they would just like to have something slightly more formalised there. Love the idea that it's paved so it can be remediated as well. It's in aesthetically, it looks like it's the same as the pavement here. So I am supportive. Has anyone else got questions or comments? Or
I'm happy to move.
Right.
I'm happy to second.
Oh, come on, let me do this one. Right, any side before we do so.
I just wondering why they're going to leave a little triangle of grass and why they don't move the entire spot. I mean, I get the aesthetics of the grass, but I just can see that getting disturbed by wheels of some.
And a bit of that's around the maintenance of the toby there.
I know.
So it's, yes.
Okay, to avoid it. Yeah, very good. Okay, so to speak on behalf of Barry, who is moving that the contents of the report be noted and that we grant the LTO for 122 Kings Drive. That's seconded by John. All those in favour? Anyone against? Very unanimously. Thank you very much. I think that's you guys. Well done. Thanks for coming over and participating, and thanks for your insights, Adam and Dave. You staying around it? I am. Very good. Very good. And Charlie, kia ora, how are you?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. So we're going to be talking about road names for the next couple of items on the agenda, and the first one is that generic list of pre-approved road names for the Upper Clutha, Wānaka-Upper Clutha. Anything you'd like to share, Charlie, before we throw it over?
Yes, we do have a couple of amendments. We got some advice from our in-house.
Right.
From Aaron Burgess, our in-house liaison with Evie.
Would you like to let us know what those changes? So I'm going to go to appendix. There was a lot of information in here, and I shared with the team that we're just focusing on the final list, which I think was appendix E from my memory. Let me pull that one up. What are the suggested changes that you have to that?
In some macrons.
Cool. Which weeks were those that required macrons?
Please ignore my pronunciation, it's going to be terrible.
Like fine.
So the first one is
Pukio?
Pukio.
Yep.
So a macron above the U.
Very good.
Please.
Yes.
The next one is
Go for it.
Weta. Yeah. We need a macron above the E and the A. At the very end.
That's a big one for us, to be honest, because the macron's missing, translate to filth, so that's why we've
so probably diminished fast prices on the street. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
And then the last one is Ruatahi, and we just need a macron above the O.
Very good. Thank you for that. So
just want to say thank you as well to Linda and others for putting this together. It's great. It makes Charlie's role a lot easier to be able to provide names. So thank you for providing those, and hopefully this report does justice.
Thank you, Linda. You did take that on board. I know we wanted to try to get the school involved, and that didn't happen. But then you went to the Upper Clutha Record Society in Te Kākano. So thanks for leading that project that's led to this.
Welcome.
Would you like to speak to it at all, or?
No, because some have come through that have been approved and going to be used. It's fantastic. A little bit more with iwi with consultation is always difficult. I did approach a kaha to come forward with some ideas as well, but they haven't yet responded. Not to say that they won't, but sowed the seed.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, could I just ask you to pronounce the two names underneath Corderline, please?
Where have we got them? Apologies. Certainly get in there.
What derivation are they? Are they?
They're Latin.
Oh, they're Latin. Yeah.
I just want to see how they're pronounced.
What can I say?
Devery.
Diva Riccata and Fragrantissima.
Oh, yeah.
Advaricata, yeah. Advaricata and Fragrantissima. So fragrant, Fragrantissima.
Some poor kid will have to spell that for the rest of his life.
I won't forget their address anyway.
That sounds like you fluent in Latin, Dave. Well done.
I had to study Latin at school.
Yes, I think that may have came up.
Yeah, I mean,
Hang on.
Oh, a couple of questions. Firstly, as Charlie and you have just proved, many of those names are contrary to the policy number 4. Names should be easy to spell and pronounce and have appropriate meaning. Now, you've just proven that we have got names on this list that are not easy to spell and pronounce, whether they be Latin or Maori. And I agree there are some Maori words that are easy to pronounce and spell, not so the same with Latin. So on a serious note, I believe we are creating an issue that is contrary to our policy. So I'd like clarification on that, and then I have another question after that also.
Would you like to speak now?
For me, I'm currently practicing my te reo and trying to get it better because I'm terrible. But I do think that part of it is us all learning and practicing. And with everything, once you hear it a couple of times and start practicing, it does become easier.
Okay, well, maybe we should need to change the policy, and I hope you're learning Latin too then.
Yeah. Well, look, I
and you've got to talk, we're talking about the whole community here, not just the staff, and not just a few councillors. We're talking about emergency services and people ringing up and dialing 111 and wanting someone to come to their street with an ambulance and all sorts of things. This is this whole thing about road naming. And I'm not against Latin, I'm not against Maori words, but they should be easy enough to spell and pronounce.
Absolutely. So it's a good point raised, and the purpose of bringing it to this group is that if you're breaching the policy, if you're not in accordance with the policy, we bring to the group to get that approved. So in situations where there might be words that you don't think are in accordance with the policy, that can be approved by the board. If there are situations that in particular you think this is not going to be helpful, then it's a decision for the board to say, hey, we support some and not others.
Okay.
Well,
with the next question.
With that in mind, I'd actually suggest we remove those two, because those two Latin names, because I do think they are problematic. They don't have. I mean,
so you're talking about the Wānaka-Upper and Fragrant.
Yeah, I mean, Prosma is a little bit more commonly used, I would say, than and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think those two are particularly problematic.
Yeah, I still have never been able to pronounce that place opposite Link Way, or Aeolus, is it, or Aureus, or I still, been here 9 years. Linda, what was your?
Oh, I was just going to say, we're in a diverse, open community, which you write into Google any one of those, and you can have it pronounced correctly for you if you so wish. And it is about learning and education, and I think whilst these Latin names look a little different, they're not too different to some of the Scottish or other English names that come into being street names. And once you've got it, you've got it. It's just.
And I get that. I do associate with Lyle's point is that the policy is there for good reason. That they need to be. It needs to work. It needs to be easily understandable. It's not designed to be memorializing people's names. It's not designed to have names that are too close together to each other. McPherson and McPherson which will come up later on, and there's very good reason for that. In that you don't want to, when you say McPherson with an MAC versus an MC, it's you can't tell. There's no distinction, and there's very good reason you don't want people, an ambulance, to confuse McPherson for McPherson. And equally, like I said, I do feel for the 6-year-olds who, you know, so where do we live, mum, on Franca Matisia Street or whatever it's called? I think it's problematic. And so, and as I said, it's not designed to memorialise developers' names. It's not designed to memorialise your grandfather's name, but there is room to acknowledge the families and the history and the you know, the history of this place. There's certainly no shortage of good Maori names. There's no shortage of geographical features. There's no shortage of plants and themes that make sense to our community that they can all associate with.
Couple of things here, Quinn. I think you're selling 6-year-olds down the road a little bit, to be honest. And I do think that actually having gone through this process that I sort of shadowed Linda on a little bit, I don't think when you say there are plenty of names, I'm not sure that is the case, because we've gone out to Upper Clutha Record Society, Historic Record Society, we've gone to Te Kakano, trying to go to school. So I'm not sure there's this whole pot of names that are sitting out there waiting to be tapped, because, you know, we weren't exactly deluged by names. And don't forget, this is a pre-approved list.
Yeah, I know.
So there's two things. No one needs to use this list at all. And the second thing is nothing's preventing from other, like we're going to do in the next agenda item, putting other names forward as well. So yeah. I don't think it's a requirement, and I don't think that it's exclusive to these names as well.
No, but what I would say, I mean, when people have approached me and said, what name should I go to? I tell them to go to the topo map. And I tell you what, there are thousands of names on our topo map for the Upper Clutha, or hundreds anyway, that are geographically relevant and have history already assigned to them through the Geographical Names Board that are relatively easy to filter through and find.
So, Joe,
I've done it myself.
Okay. What's your response to the fact that there is plenty of topo names, and why haven't we put them on a pre-approved list?
Because there's not, to be completely honest, I've recently been working with different applicants and been bringing up the topo map, and as per the road naming policy, to not bring it to the board, it has to have, as per significant geological feature, it needs to be near that road. So as part of the road maps, some of those development roads, we would want that topo part to be close by in the same area. It might look towards it. And when you start doing that, a lot of the roads here, some of the creeks may go all the way from this side over to Hawea, and then a side in Hawea will have that road name already. And because we have had a lot of development, new roads coming up, they are getting used. And yeah, we do go on the topo map and look through and go, oh no, that one's already used, or it's too similar to somewhere else. And some of the other things to remember too is that they might be a lookout name already as well, the NZTA, also, so we can't use that either.
So there is look, if development continues in this district like it's doing, and we look, you know, have we looked at just how we're going to address this? Because I don't think this problem is going away, because we're not creating new topographical features. We're not creating a huge legacy of people that have been involved. I'm just wondering, is this going to be an ever decreasing number of names to the point that we're going to be really struggling if we go into these new development areas, whole 3 parks, South Wānaka, you know, Hawea? There's still a lot more coming down the line.
For me, I was surprised, and I had this information with Charlie earlier. I was the same as Councillor Smith in thinking that there must be thousands of opportunities, but that doesn't appear to be the case. However, you know, if we look at the species of plant and animals in New Zealand, there are thousands of species, and there are thousands of species that live in these areas that you could, if you wished, name roads after. I think there's a multitude of different things that you can describe as being characteristics of the beautiful place we live. And if I was charged with somehow finding 100 names if I had the time to do that, then I think I would be able to go and do that.
Well, that does raise a good question, Dave, because we did challenge you to do that, but there was a sort of a little bit of a not our problem and standing back. So I would say there's a slight disconnect between staff and supporting this pre-approved list, because if you're now saying that there's hundreds of species, then why didn't we put them on this as well? And why was it Te Kakano that had to lead that project?
Yeah, it's simply a time issue, to be honest, Simon. That, you know, I haven't had the time, and this has taken a number of months to get to after you provided the list, so it just shows how much under pressure we are in terms of getting work done. So apologies, we couldn't assist more in that space, but it's just simply a resourcing issue.
Appreciate that, good Ken.
Yeah, well, my second question was actually around that. I was quite surprised, is this all, but you explained why, because, yeah, and going to, you don't have to just look around already. When we did North Lake, we looked at state high country sheep station names. You've got things like horses were used in this area, like why not, you know, we've got all the horse breeds, you've got winds, the names of winds, you've got sheep breeds. These all can be related to our area, and they provide another whole raft of names. You know, we've had tractors used for names, we've had planets, moons, and we've got trees, and we've got that. I think there's plenty of opportunity. I didn't realise. I know there's a pressure, a staffing issue to try and develop this, but these names can be used. They just aren't on the pre-approved list. So I'd expect a developer to keep coming forward and putting them forward for approval.
Okay, let's solve the problem that's at hand. I think we've canvassed some of the broader conversation that's been useful to be enlightened. So I think we've got a decision to make whether we approve the list as is, or whether we make a decision to strike at the moment 2 out and leave the remaining one. So where's the consensus around the table?
I think it's an approved list. We just approve it in full, and if people choose to use it, they can. But I suspect they probably won't. But I think the more options that we provide people, the better. Although I would struggle to pronounce the Latin ones more than the Terreo.
Is there a consensus or a number of people that would object to us moving the motion to approve the list as is and let those choose who want to use?
I think what John's saying makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just an option.
It's
not set in concrete. This is an option, and it's over to the people concerned to either decide to use it or not. So I'm happy just
read the complicated names 3 times now. I feel like it's less and less complicated.
Yes, very good.
In your head.
Maybe we'll just go to, New York, 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue. For one big subdivision.
Or Rua Street was the case.
Yeah. Well, numbers are infinite, so we've got really no problem with that one. Okay, who would like to move that the contents of this report be noted and that we approve the list as is, for the pre-approved list as is? Linda, yes, I think Linda's very appropriate. Linda moves that. Who would like to second that?
Sure.
Thank you, Chris. So all those in favour of that motion? Anyone against?
Yeah, I'm against based on what I said earlier about
Okay, so Lyle's against, and so the majority carry that motion. So thank you. The last item, no, it's not the last item. We've got lots more today. So let's keep moving through. So the second road naming item on the agenda is the Orchard Road Holdings Limited application, and this is one where they have looked at the pre-approved list and have suggested others, and they've given us asked us to approve 3. So I know we've had a little bit of discussion online. I just when it comes to having first name and surname road names, I certainly take your point that you've shared, Barry, that when we look at Sir Cliff Skeggs and we look at Sir Tim Wallace and we look at that, there is certainly those really well-known entities that unfortunately happen to be all male at the moment, but they were the founding fathers here, where it does make sense to have first and second names. When it's someone, and that with all due respect, that hasn't maybe had that impact, or in this case, the background information provided is very, very light around that, I feel a little compromised to suddenly put in perpetuity someone's first and second name on a street name without actually having a really deep understanding around that. So my preference is, in both these instances, that we move to options 2nd or 3rd, because I'm just not sure that the information that's been provided or the significant impact they've had matches some of the other double-barreled names that we have in some of our street names at the moment. So I would be supportive of Packer Road, Civil Drive, and I'm very happy with Ensor. I'm happy with Ensor Street. So that was just a little bit of background context around where I was sitting on this. Let's go around the table. Cody, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I sort of shared that view in principle when we were looking at North Lake, noticed Joe Brown Drive. And I'm sure there's other things as well. So
yes,
I guess I'm not sure who Joe Brown is.
Well, I think that's part of the point, though, isn't it? Because everyone knows who Tim Wallace is, but Joe Brown was a loose connection to the developer in that case, and I think Doug Ledgerwood Drive was the other one that we've done in recent times, which I think was probably wouldn't say questionable, but of limited relevance in that case. So yeah, I mean, I agree with your point. I don't have a problem with Mackenzie or Packer in their own right. I don't support Packer Mackenzie. Same with McPherson, I think, is out for the reasons we talked about before, in that it's just too close to McPherson Street. So Sybil is an easy landing there. And Ensor Street, you know, it is once again is fine, but I wouldn't. Yeah. The other.
So I'm going to come back to you, hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
We can only deal with what's in front of us. And I looked through, I think it was about 2018, I think that we did Doug Ledgerwood Drive, and I looked through the paper. It was actually, there was an obituary notice. There was a lot more context around that. Now, I'm not going to relitigate the decision that was made, but I think the basis on which it was made was sounder than we've got at the moment, because there was just a lot more historical information provided and justification for that, which is certainly absent. Does anyone want to have Chris, what do you recall? Linda, any thoughts from you? Okay. Lyle?
I just had some questions, just a clarification of the roads. Now, just I'm looking at the recommendation and then lining up with attachment B, which is a letter from the applicant. Just trying to understand, going to the map, does road 9A not join up with road 2A in the map? Did that eventually go? Because it says road 4A on the map is talking about West Meadows. No, it's not West Meadows. Alpha Meadows Drive going all the way through across Deans Drive. Would road 2 Alpha not go across to road 9 Alpha? We have two different names there.
So you're saying it should be a continuation?
Well,
so yes, excuse me.
Be consistent, and I'm just understanding in the recommendation we're only 3 roads, but there's no recommendation for Buttercup Road in the recommendation, and that's in the drawing in the application.
So that 2 of the names that we didn't put forward actually meet the policy because Buttercup.
Okay.
So
Right,
that's why we didn't include them in, because we can approve them at our end.
So Alpine Meadows is the same, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Yep. With regard to the extensions of roads, off a spine road, you can certainly have 2 different road names going off each side.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the table there were, that we're getting the 3 that don't automatically meet the naming policy. So that's why we're.
Quick question: are you comfortable, Mr. Chair, through the Chair, that Alpine Meadows is not too close to West Meadows? No, in the policy it talks about the predominant word, meadows, and I'm just, even though it's not here for approval, you're saying it's pre-approved. I just question that one, but I'm not dying in the ditch, so I'm just raising it as for consistency.
I think it's a better point. Are you guys comfortable with Alpine Meadows versus West Meadows?
I was actually looking at Long Meadow, to be honest, because of that. And we haven't approved it yet. So my plan of attack was to wait for you guys and then to approve Buttercup with Simple. But then I was going to probably take Long Meadow Drive to be the recommended option. And due to it being without the S, it does sound a lot different.
Long Meadow as opposed to Alpine Meadows.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not a, that.
So that would be the policy.
Okay.
So that would be a decision for us to make sure it's the most appropriate.
Yeah.
Right. So you've raised a good one. I think it's been noted. So
there's 3 that aren't pre-approved that we're trying to sort out here.
So Long Meadow, so you'll probably possibly do Long Meadow.
Okay.
Yep.
I also, Cody's question, I just wanted to provide some additional information. Recently, with the road names which have been getting approved in the district, I've actually, I received a spreadsheet, it might have been from Upper Clutha Historical Society. They've been taking a record themselves of all the street names. And each time I approve a new street name or one gets approved, I'm actually putting the reason why it got approved. So there will be a reference guide for some of the street names throughout the district, and it also includes Queenstown. Unfortunately, I don't have the past, but moving forward, that's what we've been trying to do, and just have an up-to-date list so people go, hey, we often do get a query, why was my street name this? And we go, it was because of this and this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I'm with you, very much with you, Simon, on the just having the family name rather than the full name, unless they've done really something substantial historically in the community. So I'm comfortable with Packer Road, Civil Drive, Ensor Street, or Peasgood Drive.
Thank you. Very thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'm of a similar vein on that one. It's interesting. I think it's great to recognise some of those people that have gone before us in Vegas area. So, and you know, certainly listening to of the double barrel names, I think there's times it's appropriate. There's other times it's not quite so appropriate, but certainly the recommendations that you've suggested, I'm comfortable with.
Thank you, Gary. So I'll note the contents of this report, and I would like to approve Road 2A being Packer Road, Road 5 being Civil Drive, and Road 9A being Ensor Street. Do I have a seconder for that motion, Cody? Anyone else? Discussions? Otherwise, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Very unanimously. Thanks, team. Good discussion. Hopefully that's useful to you guys too, just to understand how our thinking is.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to see you. Thanks, Dave. Moving to item 8 on the agenda. Matthew, good to see you from Parks team coming up and joining us. We're talking about the intention to grant a licence for the cell tower effectively on the Forest Heights Reserve just below Sticky Forest. Anything you'd like to share, Matthew, that we haven't been privy to?
It's not covered in the report currently.
Right. Who would like to ask any questions or make any observations around this item? Very good. Fantastic. Okay, so Lyle is moving that we note the contents of the report and we approve this cell tower for Connexa Limited as detailed here. Before I do that, 3 community members to be named to form a hearing panel to hear of any submissions. You'd like us to do that, Matthew?
Please.
Yep. I'd be happy to, since I haven't been on a hearing panel before. Don't think I'm conflicted in any way. Linda? Okay, who else hasn't been on a panel? Cody, or you?
On one in a couple of days.
Good on you. Okay. And John. Yeah, you haven't been on one, John. The rest of the board happy if it's Simon, Linda, and John to form a hearing panel if needed? I'm comfortable with that.
So it's pretty unlikely to be hearing.
Yeah, it might have been a reason why we all put a handful. Okay, so we're noting the contents of the report, approving the notice. Yeah, and don't forget it's an intention to notify a license is what we're doing there. We're appointing 3 community board members. Who would like to move that motion? Lyle, you would. Anyone seconding that? Barry seconding that. All those in favour? Anyone against? Or carry that. Thank you. Well done. And then Matthew's sitting around for this one as well. So this is this electrical easement, sort of almost historical, sort of in retrospect, in favour of Aurora Energy over the Sarkwood Drive Recreation Reserve. Matthew, you want to add that?
Nothing additional, it's not the report already.
Anyone got any observations around that easement there that we're formalising?
Through the chair, no, I think it's interesting, a bit of history there. A few years ago, we actually looked at selling that bit of reserve. That didn't fly at the time. So,
yeah.
I think the infrastructure is already there, but it's just a formalising.
Are you suggesting that we might go visit it again?
I don't want to go back there again.
No, if it's an easement, we make that more difficult. And it did say in the report the likelihood of disposing of that land is.
I know that it had been come up a couple of times in the past about looking at selling that land, but I don't think there's any intention in the near future to do so. And it wouldn't make it impossible, but it would restrict use of that site with an easement.
Yes. Good point.
It's only a 3-metre strip on one side, more or less, though, so it wouldn't be particularly restrictive.
Very good. Any other questions, comments around that? Fantastic. Who would like to move the, so what we're doing is, John, you'd like to move the motion that we note the contents of the report, recommend to council that we approve the easement, and that we are giving the General Manager of Community Services, which is Ken, delegated authorities to execute the easement. John, you're moving that. Anyone like to second that? Linda will second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? We carried that. Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you, Matthew. Thanks for coming over and thanks for making that simple for us and for the effort you put into the reports. So the final formal item on the report is the Chair's report. Again, really appreciate, I love reading through the engagement that we've had with the community over the last 6 weeks or so. I don't really want to go through any future engagement, or any engagement you haven't put down. We can do that at the next meeting, but anything around the Chair's report that we'd like to raise or discuss?
The donator of the statue or sculpture down the other end was very happy to see 2 poplar trees have fallen over last night. And this afternoon I'm talking with Janet about the musical playground. That was the other stuff that I just happened in the last couple of weeks.
So we're talking about the musical playground on Lismore Park?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's no decision made as to where we're.
The only thing around Lismore Park is, well, you did actually identify that area for Wānaka, for an education sort of area there. So that was, I hope that would be in the consideration that we opposite the Mac there, that would also there, that would be in the choice set.
Yeah, just wanted to note on your advocacy with Aurora that the Electrify Wānaka group has started to continue the work of rewiring Aotearoa. That's all very fresh and exciting. A lot of enthusiasm around a lot of those points. It's good to see you advocating to the various stakeholders.
And is Mike Casey involved in, or are you moving
He's
on?
involved, yeah, but not in this, well, I guess in any sort of capacity as a CEO to sort of like help and steer, but not in terms of the day-to-day, but they've asked me to be a part of it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I'll send you the detailed response I got on some of the questions we raised with Aurora, particularly around their plans for solar and distributed energy and etc. in the district.
Yeah. Awesome.
Email to Cody. John, and
I'd just like to mention that I think the Mount Barker community will be very glad that the Riverbank Road, Valentine Road roundabout is within the end of that project is within sight. It certainly caused a lot of discussion and frustration in that community. The outcome will be superb, but it's been a really long, hard process and frustrating process for us to get here. So I'm glad the end is in sight.
No.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a question on your report. The $100,000 donation by the Armstrong Trust to Mac Foundation, any indication what was that the Mac Foundation would likely use that for? Is it?
Yeah. So that was in my role as chair. I'm automatically a trustee on the Armstrong Trust. I knew that we were looking at, as a trust with my trustee hat on, winding that trust down and making some substantive contributions. We put the life pack into the new after hours acute surgery, and the second substantial contribution was for the Mac Foundation. They're creating an endowment fund. They want to get that to $1 million, which is something that's put into a managed fund, and it should get around about a 7-8% return. So that should be about $80,000 a year. Part of the trust's responsibility, the trustee, is for sick, frail, and disadvantaged. So we had a letter of understanding between the school and the trust that when that money was invested and then the proceeds distributed back to the school, it would help disadvantaged children, and that's predominantly in the area of those that can't afford devices. For those that need help with school fees and camp fees. And there's also some health services around there that they have historically invested in counselling services, and that helps there. So that is where we have earmarked our particular contribution to then be supporting disadvantaged people at the school.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And just to confirm, you want anything that happened since the report meeting to put it on the next?
Well, yeah, otherwise, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I know that there's been things, but we'll just roll that over to the next report.
Thank you.
All good. Cool. So John, maybe I understand that the democracy, the ex-governance team, the democracy team is looking for a Wānaka-based advisor to support us. How's any news on that recruitment process?
Yes, indeed. We are hiring Matthew Holscher, will be joining us a week from Monday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. So Matthew will be an earmark to support the community board and be based in Wānaka?
That's correct. Yes.
Right. Fantastic. So does that mean we'll possibly be seeing less of Jane and more of
he will be taking over the board, all the duties, the workshop, the planning review,
great
meeting at the board and the workshops.
We look forward to seeing him, meeting him. That'll be great to have a Wānaka-based person to support the team.
Very excited.
Very good. Anything else anyone would like to add? Or I call the meeting closed at 11:25. So thank you. Thank you for sticking around, Eddie.
We moved and seconded.
Oh, should have. So I'm going to unclose that meeting. Actually, yeah, I know. So I'm off my game a little bit today. Apologies, I didn't mention that the meeting was closed. I said I will almost close it, but in the meantime, I will move that my chair's report be noted. I have a second to full that. Thank you, Cody. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, exactly. I know, I should have done that in here. And as you will have noticed, we thought we'd swap things around today and do a closing karakia because we normally do the opening karakia. Yeah. And so before to send us on our way into our workshops, which is going to be with property and infrastructure, which is great. And then Maddie's coming to talk about the reserve down at water sports facility. Let's have that closing karakia.
Kia ora te marano, kia whakapapa pōna me te moana. Hai horahi ma tātou I te rangi nei. Arawa atu, arawa mai. Tātou e o tātou katoa. Hui e tai I.
Thank you. Well done. Nice to know. Meeting closed as I predetermined at 11:26. So thanks for